I don't care what packaging people choose. Eric and I will sell it to you. You want paper? Got it. You want biodegradable? Got it. But don't tell me one is better than the other when you don't necessarily know.
The systems to handle the waste don't exist. Recycling plastic isn't profitable, right? People who have these facilities aren't making tons of money. They need help and no one's investing.
Hey, well, let's get going here. I want to thank everybody. I think you guys saw that we're recording this as we normally do. We got a couple of guests. My buddy, Hugh Curtis. Hugh was not only a dear friend of mine, but a customer. Hugh has gone... we've kind of worked together for several years. Hugh, you want to introduce yourself?
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for the invite, David. I'll expand on David's comment. It's been several years. I was trying to think back. It's been probably 14 years, 15 years.
At least.
I started hooked up with David when I was with a nutraceutical company and, sort of pioneered the flexible film pouch product and pouch item with what we were using. And, at every stop I've made, I've brought him into the fold. Anyway, I won't spend too much time, but, feel free. I think all my contact information was in David's email. So if you have any questions, anything afterwards, feel free to hit me up. Find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there. I'm the purchasing manager for maple syrup company called Butternut Mountain Farm. We're headquartered in northern Vermont. We're a second generation, family run, family owned. Been in business is our 51st year. I've been here coming on 5 years, and we are one of the largest packers and producers of maple syrup, both under our label and under private label that you'll find in the US. We have 6 production lines. We run 4 10-hour shifts, and we pack every single type of maple syrup. We also deviate into maple sugar, which is if you're not familiar, it was a condensed version of maple syrup. So when you convert maple sap to maple syrup, you then process dough, and then it basically removes all the liquids, and you're left with a sugar consistency that is just pure maple. We also make maple butter, which you take syrup with that at a high temperature, chill it quickly, and you have a butter consistent product that is just, again, pure maple. We pride ourselves on having all natural, no added ingredients. Everything is pure maple. So, and I'm real interested in, really thrilled to be invited to this. I really like to see where packaging from a sustainability standpoint can go. I'm a firm believer in looking at cutting edge, looking at something different, seeing how it would fit into our segment, our marketplace, and offering a competitive advantage for us over our competitors.
Thanks, Hugh. And it's he was being very mild. He's always been ahead of the curve when it comes to not just packaging, but he's always been asking, and he seems to be 6 months to a year ahead. And what's biodegradable, what's compostable, what can I do better for the environment? And I remember specifically during COVID, he was one of the first people that went out there and realized that the global supply chain was going to collapse, especially when it came to was it syrup bottles, Hugh, or was it the shakers for maple, whatever it was? You went out and bought a year's worth of material, paid for it on the spot, and just sat on it while everybody else scrambled, which was just, you could have sold those things for $20 a piece at that particular point.
A number of our components, our plastic caps, our average lead time pre-COVID was 4 weeks. As soon as COVID hit, within a month, those lead times were 16, 18, 25, 52. I had some caps that were going out a year lead time in advance. And honestly, right now, people outside of the world that we all live in think that things are back to normal. They're far from back to normal.
Thank you. That's right.
I tell this story every single day because I have caps now that the lead times are pushing back up to 16, 18 weeks. What does that do from a supply chain standpoint? You have to You have to adjust your safety stock. You have to adjust your MLPs. You have to adjust you're ordering more just so you don't run out.
Right. Right. Well, and it's one of the reasons why Eric and I started this get together, this group, the Alliance, for the simple fact that I think at the core of Eric and I, we've said the same thing, Hugh, was that everybody, I mean, it's a general statement, but people generally think that, well, since COVID is technically over or whatever that was, that everything's great now. Everything's great. And go ahead and delay your orders. Don't order. You can last minute, call in a favor. It just doesn't work like that. And it's just like, oh my goodness. Well, let me introduce another buddy of mine. Keith and I have had a lot of fun getting to know each other over this past year. Keith Barnes and I connected on LinkedIn initially just from some posts that I was putting out there about the industry, about the sales reps and sales resellers in the industry. Keith is a Michigan State professor based in the UK, has a ton of connections when it comes to all the different global packaging entities, if you will. And Tim Barbary is also involved. And Keith introduced me to Tim indirectly. And having this UK connection is not something that Eric and I ever thought of, but we're glad we have it because, and of course, Matthew, you've kind of, stick your toes in both sides here. We're now your stateside, but so many of you guys from overseas have a similar interest, similar frustration, similar, it's such an interesting vibe from those in and the other side of the pond here, if you, so to speak, when it comes to waste collection and packaging and, the anti-plastic, the pro-plastic, the pro-paper. And Keith, why don't you jump in and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. It's nice to be here. Thanks, David, for inviting me. Yeah, as you say, I found with your good self when we started and did 2 podcasts last year that we shared the same problem areas from our different countries. And this is very apposite with me because for over 20 years, I've been running a summer school for undergrads from Michigan State University. And I've been over there 2 or 3 times and lectured there and so on. So I was very happy with joining up with someone from America to talk along the same lines as we have over here. We all have our same problems, as David has mentioned, and these will in some cases get better and in other cases get worse. And I think the biggest problem that we share with America is the fact we have local authorities who control our waste collections badly, and you have states who control your collections badly, and none of them are joining the dots together. And unless we can get this business of collecting waste together, it holds up everything else because we need more recycling plants. Investors aren't going to put their money into it unless they feel that government, wherever they are helping them. And these are the problems. And of course, now on top of that, we've got microplastics that is being nattered about left, right, and center. And we've also got AI, which is yet to prove a problem. So I leave the floor open to anyone who wants to comment.
Well, it's so interesting, especially with the AI. And Keith, you and I chatted this morning, and and from a packaging standpoint, AI. I mean, again, not just packaging. I mean, it's one of those very, very delicate subjects. You've got people that are all in. You've got people that are saying it's the end of the world. But I agree with you, Keith. We've got to tread very, very lightly on some of this stuff because people tend to go all in one direction, and ultimately that never proves as sustainable, if you will. That generally becomes an issue. So it's like, Matthew and Tim, I want to welcome you guys. Tim, I'm glad you joined us as well. So thank you again for the Keith Barnes connection. And Matthew, I know you're rapidly at work on the white paper for Tim, just to tie everybody together before we jump into Keith. I just wanted to make sure, Tim, if there's anything that we try to do in this little group is kind of share, allow people to kind of go like, hey, this is what I really need to try to help my business grow or get new customers, whatever. Keith, very similar to what we're going to brainstorm today in your world. But Tim has, and I can connect you afterwards, but Tim not only has some cutting edge software when it comes to the I guess you could say measuring the true cost of packaging products, which is quite fascinating, but taking a step further, it is true cost of the carbon footprint used in this packaging. And it's something that's state of the art. The problem, I don't want to say the problem, but one of the problems, Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, is getting people to take you seriously, getting people to kind of open their door and go like, well, why aren't we using this? I mean, this is absolutely. So part of this was what came out of last meeting was, Matthew said, he goes, hey, I could write a white paper. And I mean, that could be a good way for us to just in our little world, begin to circulate that, begin to share this. And so we're off and running. And, and I just, whatever we can do to promote what's out there. And who knows, we all know people that could possibly use this stuff. And when Keith and I connected this past week, and again, his background in the machinery, but really taking a step further in the automation or the machinery for automation, I was like, well, of course we should have him here. Of course we should let him tell us more about himself. But just for the simple fact that who knows, when it comes to, somebody needing something refit, I could see you, Hugh, in your world with machinery or whatever it may be, but we all know people. And, just us joining together here is just, I enjoy this. I like to record these and I like to kind of share as much as possible. Matthew, you doing okay? Anything you want to throw in?
It's lovely to see Keith again. We worked together when he was responsible for the lead editorial and op-ed for Packaging Today and Converting Today for years. And it's fascinating that conversations we had in 2015, 2016, talking about microplastics and why, if there was such a big problem, we would have kind of known about it beforehand. So, if there were genuinely the health catastrophe that's been kind of put about, then people who'd been consuming plastic since the 50s would have had some kind of knock-on effect from it. And the fact that nobody does, there's nothing being proven, suggests that maybe, it's a sort of a storm in a teacup. But the waste conversation is also fascinating, because the report I'm doing at the moment for Smithers, which is the future of sustainable packaging, there's loads of different drivers that are affecting sustainable packaging, but basically at the bottom of all of them is waste. The reason that we've got all this regulation, the reason that people are trying to make recyclable materials or kind of get better infrastructure or just keep less of it from going to landfill is all because of the fact that it's 2.1 billion tons of solid waste at the moment, and it's going to creep up to 2.9 in the next 10 years unless we do something about it. So I'm really fascinated to kind of hear from everybody here. And yes, I owe Tim, he and I are going to be hopefully speaking tomorrow about to follow up on the white paper and get this out there.
Thanks, Matthew. Jim, anything when you want to add?
So just for Hugh's benefit, will he have software that calculates for the producers of packaging material? They use our software for their daily estimating. So every time you've got a label change or a cap change or whatever that may be, cardboard box change, they will go to their suppliers and they'll seek a price. It's our software that's often used by well over 100 packaging sites across Europe in all sorts of different currencies, different types of packaging materials, and that produces their price. We also use the same software, but using market averages to say what's the average labor cost for a particular part of Europe or maybe the US or wherever. And we would look at the energy mix and how that's worked out. And we would then come up with not just the commercial cost, but the cost to the environment with that software. And we go and do that at the level of the SKU, the stock keeping unit. So 2 bags of crisps or chips, one might be green, one might be blue, both produced by PepsiCo, look identical in many respects, except the different color.
And the price, because it's probably produced in the same production run, comes out the same. But the carbon footprint should not, because you've got different colors and the pigments that go to make those colors. Now, that might be a very, very small number in the greater scheme of things. But if you look at what's happening across Europe, the UK, there's shed loads of legislation and initiatives now, and they all talk the same ultimate language. Data needs to be granular. Calculations need to be accurate. The way you report needs to be transparent, that it should be calculated by an independent third party, because people don't trust businesses marking their own homework. And then what sort of standard? And there is a standard in Europe called ISO 14067 for large data, and we are verified to that. One of, as far as I know, only 2 companies in the world are verified to that standard. There may be another 1 or 2 since, but it's very, very few. So to avoid the greenwashing, if you look at legislation, Competitions Markets Authority here in the UK, the equivalent in Europe, are talking about fines for greenwashing being up to 10% of total revenue of your company's revenue in a given year for greenwashing. There are some rather significant challenges going on in the fashion industry at this moment in time. I've mentioned, there's already been said, managing waste. Waste is not the major issue, although you wouldn't think it listening to the noise in the marketplace. Waste is simply because people do not do the right thing, whether that's consumers or businesses. And quite frankly, governments are now trying to introduce extended producer responsibility, a tax on the brand owners to pay for a consistent method of recycling in the future. Big question mark, so I'm sure Keith might cover that. You've got deposit return schemes. And yes, it's a great idea. It was done many years ago when I was a child, and I used to be able to take Coca-Cola bottles back to the off license and get a few pennies on the bottle for returning, and then it would be refilled. Great idea, lost its way with convenient shopping. Looks like it's coming back. We have a plastics tax being introduced across the UK and the whole of Europe, a couple of £100 a tonne. But the big no-go area is carbon emissions, because ultimately, for all the right recycling and whether you choose this material over that material, the fact is we need materials to wrap our products. The key is, why are we selecting paper versus plastic as an example? And is it really environmentally friendly? And if you look at it in terms of carbon emissions, which is what the science community, the IPCC and the IEA have all lined up behind, then actually there are times when you shouldn't even recycle. And that's quite a fundamental challenge on all of us. So
I know Jessie knows that. She's followed that forever.
Okay, so if you look at carbon emissions, that's the single biggest threat to our lives on this planet. Only today I heard on the news, the UAE, Abu Dhabi, had a 12 months rainfall in less than 24 hours. Had to close airports and God knows what else. Many streets and residential areas completely flooded. They've got no idea how to deal with it. You can go to Spain and in Barcelona, and they declared a drought emergency in January. And that's because there wasn't enough snowfall onto the mountains, which then, when it melts, goes into the rivers, which can then be used, once it's cleaned, of course, is drinking water. So suddenly you've got a major city in Europe likely to be running out of water. The truth is, carbon emissions are the most single biggest threat on this planet to all of us. And if we don't address it, we won't have a population left on the planet for any business to buy from. The big issue, thanks to things like the Russians invading Ukraine, and now we've got the issues in Israel and Gaza and Iran, and there are other disputes around the world that are less mentioned, like Sudan. They're all driving up the price of oil. They're driving up the price of other raw materials. And in so doing, people have got less money to spend. They're worried about margin erosion as a business owner. And the simple answer is people are not going to engage with reducing carbon emissions effectively because it's going to cost them money. And they can't be convinced that they're going to be able to recover that through margin recovery through the products they sell, even though the evidence we can demonstrably show is that when you take on a carbon emission strategy, you invariably reduce your carbon output, and in doing so, you reduce your price. Now, why is that? Simply, wherever there's a carbon footprint, there is a commercial cost. Or wherever there's a commercial cost, there's a carbon footprint. So if you look to one, you look to the other. The only question then is how. People will go, it's all about data and it's all really complex, and life cycle assessments is very costly because you've got a bloke walking up and down the line and so forth. Our software solution is an alternative. I'm not here to sell that today, but it can be different. And so that's a quick overview of Benchmark and my soapbox.
Thank you, brother. Anytime, Tim. We love this stuff. Miss Jessie, love to check in with you, see what's going on. How are you?
Good. I have a couple of random things. So first of all, if anybody knows anyone in the UK or Europe, packaging engineers that are looking for contracting work, I'm looking for some engineers in Europe to do business with. Well, right now I have a US-based company that has offices in the UK. They need some engineers. So let me know.
Yeah, and I will connect. Make sure you know what? After this meeting, I'll connect everybody with their contact information. In fact, Keith, when you and I were chatting yesterday, I'd mentioned about Jessie, and what makes her unique is not just the packaging engineering background, but she does a lot of work with private equity. So when somebody is looking to purchase a company or take it over or at least make an investment in, she's the one in her team of the people to go in there and evaluate whether they're getting screwed on their packaging, whether they're on the take. Is that a good way to put it, Jessie? Whether they're inefficient, don't know what they're doing, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And then after the purchase, we can go in and kind of help clean things up, get savings, consolidate.
Got it.
Save money, but then saving money and sustainability go together too, So, but then I always have comments about sustainability. And we're only recapturing somewhere between 3 and 10% of the plastic, right? Like we've got aluminum's decent, right? That's like 72%, I think. Corrugated is kind of not a closed loop anymore with consumers ordering so much shipped to their house, but people get the paper piece. It's just the plastic piece is pretty off the rails. But then, part of me says that recycling is the new religion, and there are all sorts of rules you need to abide by to be part of this new religion. And I think it's unfortunate because, like we were saying earlier, the systems to handle the waste don't exist, right? So you look at polypropylene, for example, it goes back and forth between widely recycled. So if you want an H2R tile in your packaging, you're going back and forth between check locally and widely recyclable. And there's really no investment in, like, if plastics were causing the end of the world, there's really not any recycling plastic isn't profitable, right? People who have these facilities aren't making tons of money. They need help if they're going to have universal washing, universal separation, universal all the things. And no one's investing, right? So you think about the US, you want to talk about, the war machine, or you want to talk about social spending or whatever. They're not spending on saving the world if it's really plastics that are causing it. And so it's just a wild circus to me, in my opinion. And it doesn't make any sense. There's something that doesn't make sense about it because the equipment and stuff, we're talking millions of dollars of investment. But if you're talking about the life or death of humanity, you'd think maybe that would be, maybe they'd invest in it, or maybe they're intentionally not investing. I have no idea.
You know what? Jesse, you're spot on. I totally buy into what you're saying because it's one of those things. In fact, Keith, you were the one that mentioned this the first time you and I talked, is that very similar to what you're saying, Jesse, is that there's no investment money being plowed into that waste collection, recycling, kind of separation standpoint. And until that does, you could have the greatest thing in the world that could save the world, but if there's no money behind it or investor dollars don't think they can make money from it. And Jesse, to your point, it sounds like such a, I can't find the, what's the, double-sided almost. It's like, oh, it's the end of the world, but we're really not going to do anything with it. Or, oh my goodness. And if you look at mainstream media and CBS News and PBS and everybody jumping on the bandwagon of, you can't believe that Crest toothpaste is shipping in plastic. It's like, what do you want them to ship in? An Amazon box? I mean,
Well,
this is
yeah,
toothpaste. I mean,
it's all fear mongering and sensationalism, right? So that's, and if humans can't recognize the function of media and put it in their place and put it in its place in their brain, right? And they go along with all of this, it's just like, it's ridiculous. But we live in a ridiculous time where people, like, when they choose their news media source, they aren't intentional about choosing the whole range of news sources and opinions, right? And so then you get more of what you look for in life. That applies to everything, right? And so people just don't spend a lot of time understanding their own psychology, I guess, which is unfortunate, but that's pretty deep for a packaging call here. So I'll stand down.
I hope you like this content. If you want more of it, I put together a specialized packaging alliance, a group of packaging professionals that are in different facets of this industry. We have webinars, we have meetings. The idea is to share information about this great industry of packaging, whether that be from the sales side of things to the marketing, even to the end users. My point with this is I'd love to have you join us, the Specialized Packaging Alliance. Check out the link below to learn more. Thanks.
well, and I want to make sure that we touch base with Sonny really fast to keep the floor. But Jesse, to your point, and I know we've all kind of talked individually, this is one of the reasons why I just want to have conversations. And because, Jesse, to your point, we can find, it won't take us long to find somebody and some publication and news media source that literally will agree with whatever we think. And if we just focus on that line of thinking, then we're foolish to begin with. But number two, it just doesn't make sense. And I don't know what the answer is necessarily, as much as, it drives me crazy that a CBS News or a PBS would just randomly share some babble from somebody that wasn't accredited, wasn't searched or researched for the source for this, but they just basically say, they make some stupid blanket statement that's just unfounded. But yet it's got the CBS News tag. And I guarantee you 98 out of 100 people jump on that and go, well, CBS News said it, so I guess it's right. No, that's bullshit. That's not how it works. But Sonny, fill us in, brother. How you doing? Yeah, Tim, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say that comes down to the networks that you have. So as a regular feature of my starts of the day, I watch the BBC for the English news channel. And then I can't trust everything that's being reported there. So I watch Euronews and I get a European slant on it. And I actually watch CNN. Now, I don't know how you guys rate that as a news channel, but I watch CNN as an alternative as well. Now, at the end of the day, what you start to get is a picture of what's going on and how it's reported very differently around the world. And what that tells me is, for example, the paper industry has an enormous influence on what gets reported on plastic, not what gets reported on paper.
Thank you.
And this is not just a dig at the paper industry, so please don't think.
No, it's how it works everywhere, though.
Yeah. So I use that simply illustratively. I think it's our job to and people like us to see the wood for the trees and be able to then come up with some clarity. And if nothing else, as Keith will tell you, I can be quite controversial at conferences where you've got 100, 200 people turning up wanting to hear, and I'll sit there as part of a panel or be a guest speaker and controversially challenge. And I defy the experts when I hear scientists who stand up. I listened to a scientist only the other day, was telling a story on plastics. And this other chap who was not a scientist, and he has obviously spent many years studying the ins and outs of this area. And at the end of it, the professor there simply turned around and said, but what's his accreditations? What's his qualifications to speak on the subject? And the chap tried to say, without success, I've worked in the industry for nearly 40 years. And I've got all the way up to a main board of a company. And therefore, I do know through the technical side what I'm talking about. But I'm not an academic. I don't pretend to be an academic. But don't question my knowledge.
Right.
Like suggesting I don't know what I'm talking about because I'm not a professor. And it was fascinating to see how the media tried to shut him down when he was trying to make that point. It is galling that sometimes it's, what is it Al Gore said? It's an inconvenient truth.
Truth. Right. Well, thank you.
I was going to say,
Yeah. Now with media reporting than 20, 30 years ago, you think of the British press. I mean, you could have the same story run in the Mail, Sun, or the Daily Star, and then it would be a different perspective when you look at Times, Daily Mail. Nothing's changed. It's just coming from a different source.
It is. It's just the difference is people have less time to read newspapers and they have less patience. You know, they go on a website. If they haven't found what they're looking for within about 20 seconds, they've moved on. Yeah. So it's now down to the skill of the communicator to engage people, to keep them on the website for a second or two longer, and you might try to engage them.
And what easier way to do that, Tim, than talk about gloom and doom on the on the title, or to talk about the end of the world, or have some. So yeah, to your point, where you've got 30 seconds, maybe less, to grab their attention, you're not necessarily going to go these people aren't going to read the whole entire article or consume it. So you hit them right with some controversial statement that's just bullshit to begin with. But yeah. And Keith, I remember you and I talked, and Tim, before we get to Sonny, Keith and Tim, I could really use your help going forward, because we all know Chris DeArmond, and I've interviewed Chris, and I have lots of his contact, and I totally buy into his at least reporting the truth when it comes to plastics, just basically reporting the evidence. And it's not his opinion. But what I'm getting at is, for whatever reason, we're not connected. And I really think, to your point, Tim, that the paper industry controls what's being said about the plastic industry, and that a lot of this stuff is being rammed down our throats, pro, against, whatever. And I would love to work in conjunction with Chris to consistently send out a message that, he's got this research. We have lots of videos. We now have lots of tools. I don't care, and I'll say this for the record again, I don't care what packaging people choose. Just don't tell me one is better than the other when you don't know. And don't just jump on the bandwagon and say, this is it. Look, I'll sell it to you. Eric and I will sell it to you. You want paper? Got it. You want biodegradable? Got it. And we'll sell it. But don't tell me one is better than the other when you don't necessarily know. Does that make sense?
Yeah. You're just
against. Yeah. If I can come in here, David.
Yeah, sure.
In the UK, we've got the British Plastics Federation, who I'm deeply in with. And it so happens that this year we're running a conference with them in London for the Michigan State kids that come over in July. Right. And there will be a magnificent program where they're talking about recycling, about the plastics industry, the pollution side, sustainability, and so on, and innovations. And it looks as though it's going to be a very interesting program. And of course, they stick their finger in all over the UK. So we're nearly at the same level as Chris DeArmond. And as I said to you earlier, I'm going to try and contact him and talk to him, because I'd love him to do a presentation over here of some sort in the UK, because I'm sure he's done plenty in the States. But all of this goes to people who understand packaging. And our big problem is that it's the public that don't understand packaging, and why should they, are causing the problems and choosing the wrong things, putting the waste in the wrong area, etc. And we need to send out more education to them. And we're not doing that in the UK properly. As has been said, there are people on television who come in who have nothing to do with packaging, and they just have a view on it, and they will pass a comment. And of course, the public will believe what they're saying and will go along the lines of what they're saying. So this is an important area where we must and I'll again be talking to Michigan State to see if within their increased size, which is going to happen in the next couple of years, they will be able to get more information out to the public, apart from obviously training more people to be packaging engineers.
Good.
Sorry,
Thank you.
David, can I just follow up?
Yeah.
I mean, Jessie went earlier. She said, if you know any packaging engineers or whatever, I don't know if you're looking for them in the UK, in Europe, or to be based in North America. But Jessie, Keith and I are members of the Midlands Packaging Society. So this is a not-for-profit organisation. We have contacts in the region of 1,000 people in our network, and they will include packaging engineers as well as packaging designers, packaging buyers, you name it. If you could give us a sort of like a job spec type person spec that you're looking for, including where they would be based and stuff, we could post something into our network to see.
Okay, that'd be amazing.
Well, not only that, but I'm also in with PPMA, that you may have heard of, the Process and Packaging Machinery Association. I'm talking to them all the time, and I can easily get contacts for you in every area, because they produce a directory which I get regularly. So there are new people coming into the world of machinery all the time, as indeed there are in every industry. So I can put you in touch with whoever you want. Just send me your email and we can chat. We can take it further.
Yeah, so based in the UK or the EU, so that's perfect. You got the perfect network. So thank you so much for the offer. I'll connect after the call with both of you.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Okay.
Sonny, fill us in. How are things in your world?
Hey, David, I'm doing good. Sorry, I was late for a few minutes and I kind of missed out on initial conversation, trying to catch up on the conversation. It's really nice meeting new members, Keith, Pennis and Keith, Pons, and I believe, I'm sorry, I'm just kind of catching up. And Hugh, it's really nice to have you guys on the team. And I look forward to, learn more from all of you. Just a quick introduction about me. Early this year, I started my own packaging company called NK Packaging, where we specialize in providing innovative packaging solutions, mainly tailored for the skincare, hair care, health and beauty industries. Our extensive range includes flexible plastic tubes, bottles, jars, as well as glass and aluminum components. With manufacturing partners we have in South America and key Asian countries such as China, Vietnam, and Korea, we ensure top-notch quality components to our customers. What really sets us apart is our philosophy to bring value to the brand. Like it's one thing about, just getting an inquiries and selling the components by adding some markup. But what we really try to do is try to go deep into understanding the nature of the project and try to work together with the customer to understand their need and bring value. Like, okay, if you are looking for a specific component, why do you want glass, or why do you want paper? Why do you want plastic? What are the best options for you? Like, you try to bring value. That is where it's not all about the numbers, but what we try to do is what value can we bring to the brand. This is something what we are trying to do differently. And again, with the lean organizational structure that we have, it minimizes our overhead cost and translates into the cost-saving opportunities for our customers without compromising the quality. We are committed to sustainability and we offer a range of eco-friendly components, making us a preferred choice for the indie brand seeking both affordability and environmental responsibility. Additionally, our in-house branding services bring creative ideas to life, thus enhancing the appeal of our packaging solution. I work from the Los Angeles office and I oversee the operations, while we have a salesperson in Cleveland, Ohio, plus insurance support to our clients both in the East and West Coast. If any of you come across any packaging needs or opportunities where our expertise can add value, then please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And meanwhile, I also look forward to kind of learn more from all the different expertise that we have in this team members when I can collaborate and I can bring value both to your expertise as well as to my clients and my company.
Sonny, did you say you have a partner in Cleveland?
Yes, sir, I have.
Okay, let's make sure we touch base after this, because I'll lend my resources in any way too. Anything I can do to bring this to the table. Okay.
Yes, sounds good, David. Yeah, we'll do that. But whenever you get a moment, please guys check the website enkipack.com. It's ENKIPACK. It just went live.
Yeah, it's on the agenda, and I'm going to share everything afterwards as well. Well, Eric, anything you want to share, my friend? I didn't mean to forget about you there at the beginning. I figured before we wrap things up. Go ahead, fire away.
Yeah, first, love that the group's getting bigger. I love the diversity. I love that, everybody has such wonderful thoughts, ideas. I'm going to go back to a couple things. So went to a show, big packaging show in Atlanta called Modex. And it seemed like every guest speaker there was talking about sustainability and all this. But, a whole lot of talk and not a lot of action. Yeah, just to keep, Barnes, your point, it's Matthew, all these things where we talk about it. And so when you say that, I live in Georgia, north of Atlanta, and I work with mainly a lot of textile people right in my backyard. I engineered floors, Shaw, Mohawk, the surfaces. And there is a major player. I got a buddy of mine in recycling, and there's a major player out there that makes synthetic turf. And their waste is enormous. When they get the stuff back, and they had my guy had one, he's their only option right now, only has one customer who was doing it. And when diesel fuel was, reasonable, they're trucking it up to Pennsylvania, a good 1,000 miles away, and they were doing something with it. And then as soon as diesel went up, the program ended. So my friend is being paid by a major player, 1 million tons of this product in a dump. I know I see you laughing, Matthew. It's because it's not funny. He sent me pics of this stuff. I got right on my phone, and he's like, any thoughts? And I'm just saying that's how not desperate this world is, but how uneducated, how unmotivated. I don't even know where it goes from there, Mr. Barnes, because any of you that we talk about this is. We're running, there's no good ideas. This kid has approached the state of Georgia saying, I'd like to do what these people in Pennsylvania are doing. And they're like, yeah, go ahead, fund it yourself. They're not even interested, in helping. Just keep chucking it in the dump and paying through the snout. It's strange how that happens. And so, like you say, I don't even know where I'm going with some of this, but to my point is it's upsetting to think that nobody's taken the time to, like you say, look at carbon footprint. No one's taken the time to look at, what's a better solution, how we do it. They're looking at me, and I'm a one-man band who sells packaging. And they're not saying they're dragging me. They're asking me for my ideas. And I'm like,
I know.
We are in trouble if you're asking this Pollock how to do something straight, guys. It's a problem. So that was the only thing I want to say, because Jesse, brought that up on that. But that was number one. I think that like I say, I saw everything with sustainability at this show, and no one's doing anything. I mean, David and I have had this conversation. Same we've had. These people cannot wait to get to Friday afternoon so they can have their martinis and, and get to the weekend. There's nobody there leading a charge. There's nobody there, getting involved. They're not dedicating a person within their organizations to help them. And that's sad because, we are, with whatever 7 plus 8, I don't even know how many billion, we're on a crash course. Now you say this, you got Michigan State. Now we got Wisconsin. Ron Dane. I stood there when my buddy from Drew Brees from the Boilermakers, spent the whole half in your third quarter, and we still lost the game in Camp Randall. Drove me nuts. I think he set a world record that for pass attempts too. It's anyway. But when you get down to it, I say this is the most intelligent conversation that I've had about this is with you folks here, not with people that can actually do something about it, I guess, so that I just wanted to throw that out there because it's very nice to listen to, and there are people like us that care. That's the other thing is I care. I just don't know where to start. Let me tell you this, I can't solve world hunger, but I can do stuff in my community and give a guy a jacket, a woman a sandwich, and a few dollars to help a homeless person. Yeah. But when you start looking at this globally, we've got issues. So I'm going to end that there. Second of all, go ahead. I want to say I'm done because I am, but I can't wait to get everybody's information because I do have a few things to talk to you about, Keith, up there, your group in Wisconsin. And please go ahead and feel free because anybody kick in.
Got it.
If I may, two observations. One for Keith, with regards to your machinery. Are you doing any developments with machinery that will effectively be running in black or dark rooms after the installation?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we have machines that are in lights out rooms that will run 24/7. Absolutely.
So artificial intelligence, sort of robotics, so running the machines, and maybe the only time someone walks into the area is when they reset the machine or they're doing a clean down.
Right, exactly. And we'll hook up all the, a type of AI to the equipment that will show the engineers in the offices what's going on, and they can see it running and et cetera. So we get into a level of AI for sure.
Okay. And for Eric, to answer your question, to be honest, until such times as, and I know it's harder in the US probably than it is in Europe, and it's the political will, and it's challenging the capitalist system, where what we do need to make a difference in the first instance is governments need to legislate. We need a mechanism that would ensure the value of taking a expensive virgin material, and then we're going to put more processes on it, then we're going to recycle it and then expect to sell it at half the price of the virgin material. And of course, that's just crazy economics. It won't work. And therefore, we need some sort of legislative interaction where we insist that the price of the recycled is therefore on par with virgin material. Now, in the first instance, you need legal and way to deal with that. Then, of course, there's the question with the waste, how do we collect it to make sure there's enough recycled material that can be used? And then what you need there is to invest. Now, if you leave it to businesses, they won't do it. So across UK and Europe in the coming years, there are already posted initiatives. Extended producer responsibility is put in the brands, your Mars, your Kimberly Clark's, whoever, Kraft, they will pay a tax, which they'll pass on to the consumer. And that drives inflation. And at this time, when all of us are worried about inflation, this is not the timing, but actually it's what needs to be done. And what you have then is a tax which will pay the recycling industry to make the necessary investments. And let's not forget, once these investments are being made and the equipment's in place, the government's got a revenue stream which they won't be using on recycling going forward. And I bet they don't give it back to us, the consumers. Nevertheless, you start with the government. You then have businesses, and you create a market that's appropriate. Once you've got that, the demand truthfully is there, but no one wants to pay for it. But we have seen in the last year or so, inflation of 10% or more in our countries, and consumers didn't want that, but they paid it. So if you ask people, are you willing to pay for it? The answer is always no. But if you actually say for the common good, and I will just give you a little historical reference, how legal people get involved. And this goes back some hundreds of years in London, where we didn't have proper sewage being cleaned and managed. And the politicians going to the House of Parliament, which is right beside the River Thames, were so put off by the smell of the sewage in the river, they couldn't do their job. And they said, look, you've got to do something. And what they did, they introduced the first sewers in London. And then lo and behold, if it's good for London, it's good for the rest of the United Kingdom. And so we start to introduce sewers. And I actually compare where we are in this area on sustainability in the same way. What we need, unfortunately, is a major fire, a major flood, something dreadful that's going to impact our politicians who will go, tell you what, we're now going to got fused on them. And only then will we start to see change.
Yeah.
But if you want something controversial that comes out of this group, that's the sort of thing. Are you waiting for the sewers to bung up and smell so you can't work? Are you waiting for a fire to come to your Senate building, etc., before you do something? And we name and shame people. That's the way to do it. Controversial.
Well, a little tip, thanks, Tim, for a little tidbit. Hugh, I'll get to you in a second. I've been chasing a local politician now, and I'm hoping that I can have him on. He's in Ohio, but he will certainly be enlightening, at least for us, to be able to kind of like, how do we even start this conversation? Right. I mean, he's going to be, and again, I mean, you talked about throwing a rock into the ocean, but here in the U.S., we got to start from our local community, then the city and the state versus, it's a shit show. But I want to get somebody on here to help us navigate, because I mean, that's where I'm going, by the way, to this. Oh, hell, I'm not going to get into it. Hugh, go ahead. Fire away.
Yeah, just real quick, David, thanks for inviting me to this today. And it's interesting as we started chatting, a while ago, Jess messaged me, and her and I worked together 3-4 years ago. A client of hers, a client of ours, we worked through a bottle weight reduction project.
Nice.
Where we took a PET bottle that their client was using, made a second gen model.
Yeah.
Which had a whole, sustainability trickle down effect, because it weighing less when we ship it. We could reduce the ECT strength of the box. We did such a heavy, thick corrugate box, which reduced costs, which just took a lot of cost out of the system. So, it was really cool. Now that was, like I said, I think her and I said probably 2020, somewhere around there. So,
no kidding.
The last thing for our British friends, Tim and Matthew and Keith, totally off business, totally off topic, but who's your football team? Just so I know.
I knew it was coming.
Chelsea in my case.
Oh my goodness. Okay. All right. Okay, great. Well, you're off the list. Okay, great.
Yeah. Liverpool. Whoa.
I've got
Newcastle.
So, and that's
right.
So,
all right, guys. Well, thanks. And Jesse, if you're on still, I can't see if you're there, but thank you everybody for joining us. I'll send everybody the copy on this, or the recording, I should say. And I'll get you set up for next month. Keith, thank you for joining us. Both.
Yeah, thank you very much, all. Nice meeting you.
Everybody, have a good one. Thanks to everybody. See you, Tim. See you, Matthew. Bye, Eric. Bye, everybody. See you, Sonny.
Hi, everyone. It's David Marinac. I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you want to see more, here's another video that you can check out, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks.